This is Francisco Perez with another educational lesson. So I'm reading from this book. The book is called At Sea with the Scientifics, the Challenger Letters of Joseph Matkin. This book is covering the life of Joseph Matkin and his journeys throughout the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Today, we're going to be starting on page 272. This will be encompassing the time periods between July of 1875 and November. Okay? This section is called Polynesian Island Falls. Alright. So I'll start actually at 271 at the end. The Japanese are very ignorant about everything of that sort and scarcely know the size and extent of their own country. Miss Maru was quite in a fog about everything. 10 miles out of Yokohama, and concerning the history of Japan, she could only relate her and her papa's experience. If I asked her about her religious views and opinions, she would only laugh and point to the English church and to the large neighboring Buddhist temple and say, "That is your church, and this is mine." After which she would change the subject to the prices of ladies' clothing in England. Of course, I was particularly well up on that subject. I think I told her that a complete costume for a respectable English lady would cost something around 2,000, including a set of teeth and some back hair. Miss Maru was very pretty and very genteel. Her manner of bowing and receiving payments for refreshments I have never seen equaled. I have her portrait, and so have about 60 others in the ship. I find her ideas on the position of the Sandwich Islands were very vague, and to give her an idea of their whereabouts, I could only jerk my finger out towards the Pacific and say, "It's a month's sail out there." I see by the papers that the Americans have managed to possess themselves one of the Sandwich Islands as a naval depot for their fleet, and gunpoint, gunpoint, you gotta check it out, gunpoint, bayonet constitution, gunpoint, persuaded the king to refuse this privilege to any other power. This is another smart piece. This is another smart piece of Yankee diplomacy. We give you gunpoint, we say, do what we want to say, or else. That's diplomacy. And I dare say that they will succeed before long in what they have been long scheming for, the annexation of the whole group. Let me repeat that. This is another smart peek of This is another smart piece of Yankee diplomacy. I dare say that they will succeed before long in what they have been long scheming for, the annexation of the whole group. Alright. July 24th. We expect to reach Honolulu on Tuesday, the 27th. As we are only 300 miles away, We have picked up the northeast trades, and the weather is much hotter, but pleasant though. The depth since the 17 has been about the same, but we have lost 1,500 more line. We shall probably sight land on Monday evening, for the most of the islands are lofty, being of volcanic origin. The Pacific Islands generally lie in the clusters and groups. The Sandwich Group number 13, 250, 13, 250, eight of which are inhabited. Their total area is about 6,000 square miles, and the population 600,000. The group was discovered by Captain Cook in 1778 and named after the first Lord of Admiralty, Lord Sandwich Cook. He established the population at 400,000. This is all small estimates. This is just so that the reason why they do this is so later on when the descendants show the number how many survived, they can say, well, yeah, 50, 60,000 survived, but it was only 400,000 instead of really the real estimate, the real number, which was 1,400,000. So go figure. So that in all probability, these people will have entirely disappeared before the lapse of another century. So this is like common knowledge of this tactics. Any respectable gentleman from England and America would know this. Like the natives of Tasmania, who also numbered several thousand when Cook visited there. The Kanakas, which what they call is not Hawaiians, the Kanakas, as they are called, were described by Cook in his journal as the finest, the most civilized, and the best disposed of all the South Sea Islanders. I believe Captain Cook treated them fairly and was a good humane man. But the conduct of several of his officers and crew was cruel and disgraceful. And in a squabble at Ohio, which is the name of it before, and the name carries on in the Four Corners region where the name, the ancient name of Hawaii, was placed in there. And I read that just recently. So, in a squabble at Ohio in 1779, caused by the impolicy of some of his crew, Captain Cook fell a victim of the sudden resentment of the natives. Ohio, or Hawaii, is some 200 miles southeast of Oahu and the other islands, and was not discovered until 1779, when Cook returned from the Arctic to the Sandwich Islands. Again, it is the largest island, its area being over 4,000 square miles and the population 27,000. And it contains the stupendous volcanoes of Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, each over 1,300 feet high and still active. The Kanakas belong to the same family as the Maoris and Tongans and are unmixed with the Black Papuan. See, that's a lie right there because the Tongans is the the Black Papuans. We all look like that. And the Maoris look like that too, but they got mixed early. and a lot of them fight their heritage. They cut their hair and they don't get the proper sun they used to get. You'll be surprised what happens when you go back to your culture and heritage. The present king is Kalakaua, elected in 1874. The islands are just inside the tropics and very fertile. So you producing sugar, coffee, cotton, arrowroot, rice, cocoa, breadfruits, and numerous West Indian fruits. They are all well situated for trade and the seat of considerable commerce, so the money, chiefly with America. Honolulu on the island of Oahu is the capital of the group. July 27th at Honolulu. One second. We sighted land at 3 a.m. in the morning, and by 5 a.m. the islands of Molokai and Oahu were in sight. We dredged between the two islands all morning, but got nothing. So, so proceeded onward under all sail and steam. The islands were lofty and very irregular shape, and they looked about as large as Fayal Azores. At 2 p.m., we passed Diamond Head at the southeastern extremity of the island, and at 3 p.m., we anchored outside the reef in front of Honolulu and made a signal for a pilot to take us in. A native pilot soon came out and took the ship through the shallow channel between the Great Barrier Reefs, which extended all round the island. We anchored by 4 p.m. within a stone's throw of the town, and the mail was at once set on board. There was no letters for me, as usual, but as another mail is expected in tonight from San Francisco for Sydney, I live in hopes. There are a few whaling vessels here, and an American flagship, Pensacola, the usual contractors. Washermen, etc. Washermen and company came on board at once. Fresh meat, vegetables, and bread are each 2.5 pounds, um, and provisions in general are pretty cheap. Butter made on the island is only a third per pound, and this is a great rarity in the tropics. The meat is quite as good as in Australia, but fruit is not so cheap as it should be, and washing is 5 per dozen. About half the native population of Honolulu came down to the wharf to see the ship moored, and after seating themselves as comfortably as possible, gave themselves a half holiday apparently, and took a good long view of us for about 2 hours, then went home to supper. From my short experiences, from my short experience, I should say the Kanakas are about the most cheerful, good natured, good natured, indolent, and impulsive race of people under the sun. One gentleman, one old gentleman came on board and introduced himself as Mr. John Williams, shook hands and said he had a pleasure of seeing me before at Calcutta. I told him I have never seen him, I've never been there. So he shook hands again and said, "I must have been your brother. It must have been my brother," and told me to come and see him at any time. The Kanakas, or Hawaiians, are in appearance the very counterpart of the Maoris of New Zealand, and much darker than the friendly islanders, and being brown as Malays, Melanesians. Still, they have a pleasanter look than the Maoris, and are much superior to the Fijians or Admiralty Islanders. They are fine made people and dress in European costume. I have not seen any woman yet. And this is what the kind used to say, Captain Cook, because we only ate like poi and fruits and vegetables, and we ran and walked everywhere, and we surfed, paddled, we sled down the mountains. We just we had Olympics. We had like a form of Olympics. Every, man, that's all we did was work out, we farm. So we was in top shape, and they said it was like impeccable health. And we had dreadlocks hanging down to the floor. Like if I don't brush my hair, this it dreads up. I gotta watch out. I gotta. It's all tangled. Look, look. Ah, shit. Alright, let's do this shit. Okay. I have not seen any woman yet except at a distance. Of course, the Hawaiians are ex converted by American missionaries chiefly, and they're undoubtedly the most civilized of the Pacific races. But unfortunately, it is the civilizing process that is killing them so fast. No, it's not the civil. It was the bioweapons. The bioweapons that killed us so fast. Because we had turmeric, we had all of these different things that popolo berries to heal us. It wasn't the sickness. It was the bioweapons, the grades of weapons, the style they did it in. Okay. They are very sensitive people. That's what they said about the Native Americans, the indigenous people of America when they killed them. Sensitive, just sensitive, these people. And one of our seamen who has been here before assured me that they can lay down and die whenever they feel disposed. So unless they intermarry with some other races, say the Chinese, or unless they introduce the Mormons into their country. So this is the bullshit story right here that got my peoples onto mixing. They said, if you don't mix with a European or a Chinese man, then you're gonna die from these diseases. You must mix to survive. They gonna write them in 27. They gonna write them whenever this book was written. Oh, they said, oh, they must mix to be healed. Oh my goodness. They will soon belong only to the past. It says that. They will soon belong only to the past. There are lots of Chinese at these islands. Canaanites, tribe of sin. They always bring their homies. And a very hard-working, useful lot of people they are. And a very hard-working, useful lot of people they are. What do they always say? Oh, they're lazy. Oh, they couldn't farm. Oh, useful people. Just no use. But this one is saying, and very hardworking people. I'm sure it is a good job they are so numerous. I see the papers that measles had carried off about one third of the Fijian natives since we were there. So the English and Chinese will soon have it all to themselves in that group. So the English and Chinese will soon have it all to themselves. So they've been doing this all over. They went to Fiji and they wiped the Fijians. And for some reason, they held strong and kept it. They kept the indigenous look for the most part. Like Majority of them still have afros. The island of Oahu has a very pleasant rural appearance, but the scenery is certainly not tropical as seen from the ship. If it were not for cocoa palms dotted here and there, one could fancy the islands to be of the Azores. It is not to be compared to Tonga Tapu or the Fiji Islands, and the town of Honolulu has a very straggling, unimposing appearance. The weather is much hotter here. Their thermometer 85 in the shade and 120 in the sun. This ship is already full of flies, and the ravenous but playful mosquitoes um, are only waiting for us to turn in before commencing their onslaught. And that's what happened. My people made sure it was crime. It was a big crime to pollute the rivers, and the biggest law was to make sure the rivers was always flowing. And the Europeans knew this, so they came there and they changed everything. They said, "Stop the rivers from flowing. We want stagnant water so we can go and make mosquito land." And so now there's mosquitoes in every river source. It's loaded. And this was an excuse they used to destroy the farms and the irrigation systems. Oh, this is no good. Throw it away, make houses, sell them to the Chinese and the Japanese. I should tell you more about Honolulu after I've been on shore. The mail for Sydney is in sight, I am told, and will be in by 11 p.m. So in the morning, I hope to get my long expected letters. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. Okay, here we go. I have been on shore here twice and went horse riding both times. Honolulu is quite a civilized place, more like England than any place we have been to since leaving Wellington. There are some fine ships of all kinds and a very considerable white population, principally American settlers, merchants, consuls of all nations, missionaries of all sects, and invalids from America and Australia. There are several churches, Hawaiian or Native, Methodist, Wesleyan, American, and Roman Catholic. The Native Church is the largest and is just like an English dissenting church. It was nicely seated and contained a good organ. The king's seat is under a crimson velvet throne canopy, and in the center was a large spittoon containing several ends of cigars, and the other pew contained the same. So I suppose the Hawaiians smoke in church. It was a weekday when I looked in, so of course I can't say that they do smoke during service, but they certainly smoke in the church. And there are only four hotels allowed in Honolulu, and they have to pay a very heavy tax to the government, which makes the drink very dear and promotes temperance. There are lots of Chinese keeping shops, and they nearly all have native wives, and generally very pretty children. So we took all the lower of the low that came and made sure they married native women, and we made them beautiful, more beautiful than the family back home, more graceful than the family back home. And they work hard and are looked down on by the natives on that account. So my people was pissed off because they understood that they were bringing them in to marry the woman and displace the Hawaiians and the family system. And of course, the natives do work, but in a dysentery sort of manner. And they want very high wages. About 40 of them under an American overseer helped to coal this ship. Their pay was 5 per day, and the overseer offered them another 4 to work until 10 p.m. one evening. The natives laughed, but refused the job and told the Yankee to do it himself. They laughed but refused the job and told the Yankee to do it himself. The natives can nearly all read and write the Hawaiian language, and most of them can speak English. Their books are printed in the Hawaiian language, and they only talk English to strangers. They live in nicely furnished houses and are altogether quite as civilized and as comfortable as the working class in Europe. Their living costs them very little. Their living costs them very little. Now today, and they work when they like. And on a Sunday, they dress in the latest fashions and strictly observe the Sabbath. And I have document facts that they they worship, they practice the Sabbath, they observe the Sabbath from ancient times, and they actually did it on Saturday. But it was changed when the Christians missionaries came. They are religious and straightforward, without being at all gloomy or straight-laced. The town is laid out exactly like an English town, with good horse roads, for there is large carriage traffic. One week the men wear shirt and trousers and go barefooted. The women wear a long colored loose nightgown reaching to the ankles, and generally no shoes or stockings. And their hair is worn either to two long plaits or hanging loose down the back. They wear natural flowers in their hair and also in their little straw hats. This is their weekday dress. On a Sunday, they dress rather more expensively than our English lady bound to a flower show, and they are very fond of a high lace of French boots. The real native women are not so handsome as the Tongan women, but the half castes are very handsome, and and many are married to Europeans. There is an upper and a middle and a lower class, even among the Kanakas. The principal amusement are bathing and horse riding. All the natives can ride, and they can all swim. You may see bathers bathing or throwing their children in the sea before they can walk, to teach them to swim. I believe there are more horses on the small island of Oahu than in the country of Yorkshire. They breed so fast that every native who wishes can have one. Every decent white person keeps a horse and carriage, and there are horses grazing all over the island. The women ride the same as the men, astride of the animal, and to see them on a Saturday afternoon in their white muslin dress galloping along the streets by scores, with their long hair streaming behind and a baby in front, is to see the pretty sight. Saturday afternoon is generally a holiday with the natives, and they dress up and trim their hair and their horses with flowers before going out. They generally use the clumsy Mexican saddle, and the saddle of bridle costs as much as more as a horse. They may buy a horse for £1, but you can hire one under two, even for an hour. The last horse I rode was a donkey at St. Michael Azores. Honolulu has been thronged this week with sailors on horseback, and I am sure it's a great mercy no one has been killed. I must not forget to remark on the number of pigs, dogs, and cats there are on this island, especially cats. You see cats in all the houses, all the gardens, on all the walls and roofs, and following people about the streets. And pigs are to be met with everywhere. I saw a party of natives cooking a pig, and they asked me to partake, but I wasn't hungry. They cooked him whole, and just as he was killed, in a pit full of red hot stones, and as soon as he was sufficiently cooked, they poured cold water on him. Coconuts are rather scarce here, but bananas, oranges, mangoes, guavas, melons, and limes are plentiful, but they are brought from the large island of Hawaii, or Ohio. The natives are very fond of elaborate funerals. I met one on Saturday afternoon with plums and hearse in grand style, and the natives in the deepest mourning, but chanting loudly and affably as they marched along. The cemeteries are pretty, and the natives are fond of gravestones. The finest building in the place is the King's Palace, built in 1872 by Kamehameha V. It is something like a gentleman's hall in England, with a square church tower in the center. The state officials here are nearly all Americans. There is a fine native cavalry regiment, one of infantry, and a military band. The population of Honolulu is 70,000, of whom one third are foreigners. You can't hire a horse or buy a glass of beer or do any sort of bartering with the natives on Sunday. It is the Sabbath. With men and beasts there, with sort of bartering with the natives on Sunday. It is Sabbath with men and beasts. They considered it a great sin some time ago, when an English and French and an American man of war all sailed from the island on a Sunday morning. They don't mind a vessel coming in on a Sunday, but they can't approve one sailing. Our men who were on the shore last Sunday could buy nothing, nor get any drink, and they say that they walked about the town with their pockets full of money, like a lot of codgers. For sure, a large town. I never saw quieter or more orderly streets. The shops are nearly all shut after 7 p.m., and the streets are as quiet as on a Sunday evening in England. And there is evening services in nearly all the churches. Most of the houses are built of wood, nicely painted, and with flower gardens attached. The island is not the fertile. This island is not the fertile island, for the soil is nothing but lava cinders, and everything has to be cultivated. I consider these natives far superior to those of the Philippine Islands in cultivation and social progress. Although they were cannibals less than 100 years ago, bullshit. The first missionaries arrived here in 1820 in the bridge Thaddeus from Boston, United States. The white ladies here, of course, ride horses the same as in England, but where everybody rides astride, a side saddle looks ridiculous. Lots of the native women are over 6 feet high and generally as tall as the men. And compared with the Chinese or Japanese town, there seems a great scarcity of children.